Hi everybody, and it's hello from me, and once again from Mickey Dog here in Nova Scotia. Where is everyone else from? You can post your comments in the live chat area, just let us know where you're from, and also just to confirm that you can all hear and see me okay. And while I wait for you to add your comments, just introduce yourself. I'll begin by setting the agenda, which won't take very long today. I think today's session should last under half an hour. It's kind of hard to say with these things because they're live and a bit spontaneous. I'll go through the feedback that I've received from the course feedback forms. We probably haven't got all of those already, but we've got a bunch of them, so I've gone through and had a look at your comments, and I've been looking at some of the comments that you left in the course online, and then I'll make some general housekeeping. I'll begin by making some general housekeeping remarks, obviously, and then I'll look at your live chat questions that you're posting just now, which reminds me, I'll come back to this in a moment, but if you want to post a question for me to discuss, I think it would help if you put an asterisk in front of it, because there tends to be sometimes discussion in the live chat, so it's difficult for me to pick out all of the questions to spot all of them. But if you put an asterisk in front of anything that you actually want me to read and answer, then that's easier for me to spot at the end of the session when I'm skimming through. There's also, I think, a 30-second delay. I timed it and it seemed to be 30 seconds between your comments and my response. That's usually not a big problem, but it's not instantaneous. The live chat comments that you type in also are temporary. However, so they'll disappear at the end of the session. This live stream will be replaced by a permanent recording of the session for posterity. So if you can't watch it all, or people that miss it will be able to see the recording at any time in the future. The majority of people view the recorded version, and if you have comments that you want to be permanently visible, you can put them there, and that means also I can put links up there that you can access permanently. So I'll just check in with you briefly and confirm you're all saying hi. I guess you can hear and see me okay. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so a couple of other things about SMRT. A lot of people ask, will it run again? It will normally run once or twice a year. It's kind of difficult to say for sure exactly when, because as you can probably imagine, it tends to be me that runs it. It's always me that runs it. And it depends on availability. I'm super busy at the moment with the Stoicism conference and other courses and books and stuff like that and other things. So possibly I'd like to run it again in November, or failing that it will run again sometime next summer, maybe next July. The other question that people ask a lot is how long will it remain online for? We kind of have to use this course as something that runs at certain times in the year rather than having continuous intake for a number of reasons. And so I know that some people lag behind, and therefore it will be available for a while afterwards, several weeks. I'm not sure exactly how long. We won't leave it up permanently, but if you're a bit behind, the course content will still be there for 3 or 4 weeks. If you haven't already done so, just a reminder to complete the course evaluation feedback form, like my little Google form, which literally takes less than 5 minutes to complete, and I read it all and we report on the findings, and that's how we know the course is okay, because we ask you to rate just 3 simple numerical ratings of satisfaction with how clearly worded it was. Did you understand the content? Did the content seem relevant? Like, was it useful, helpful? Did it have an impact? And also, was the technology working? Basically, was the platform okay for you? Did the software work? Any technical hitches? And we just have 3 questions for that you rate. And then there's a text box where you can say what you thought the pros and cons of the course were. And I've gone through that. I'm going to be commenting on it in a moment. However, if you haven't done it already, it'd be awesome if you could, because we find it really useful. There's also Tim LeBon's end of course questionnaires. Don't fill those out unless you filled out the pre-course questionnaires. We can't make everybody do it, but we kind of depend on people filling those out to collect data to support the project, and it's essentially anonymous. Like we're just looking at the means. So if you have filled out the pre-course questionnaires, it's really important that you fill out the post-course ones. There's a link on the final page, or the second last page now, of week 4, and I also emailed out the link to that as well, so most of you should have got it in an email as well. So now is the time to fill out the post-course questionnaires so that we can compare your results, and Tim will do an analysis and he'll probably publish a report on that, and it'll probably be similar to the reports that we did before, maybe slightly different. The course has changed a little bit. It's because it's on Teachable now. It was interesting for me to look at the rating of the satisfaction with the software, because we used Moodle before. For all you geeks out there, it's like it's a software that you use for running online courses. Moodle, it's free, it's kind of old now. It's not the best in some respects, but it's very widely used. I've got a few stories about Moodle. WordPress then we used, which is pretty cool, but there's some technical hitches, so like I think scaling WordPress that we ran into, having too many users and some other issues with it. Right? So we decided to try Teachable, which is a more modern software platform for e-learning, and the satisfaction scores, as we'll see in a moment, are really high, which is good. Teachable has its pros and cons, but people seem to really like it. I'll talk about what I think the reasons were for that in a moment, and maybe you can comment on it in the live chat as well. I'll be interested to see what you have to say. So do the questionnaires, basically. The other thing I'd say is, if you haven't already, look at the discussion forums, and actually it'll only take you a minute to look at the goodbye and FAQ page discussion at the end of the course, and it's mainly people saying bye, thanks for the course and stuff, but there's a lot of feedback there that you can read right now, with people saying what parts of the course they found useful and the kind of benefits that they gain from it. I think one advantage of that is in terms of social learning, it acts as reinforcement. I remember years and years ago, for example, in Harley Street, in my clinic there, running a group session for people that had problems with anxiety and insomnia, and I gave them a recording to listen to, and the next week when I met them again, out of 8 or 10 people, only one person had actually bothered to listen to the recording, but she raved about how it was the first time in years that she'd had a good night's sleep. And so, despite everything I said as the therapist, like telling people this is really useful, you should do it, really beneficial, they were like, yeah, I haven't got the time to do it, I can't be bothered doing it or whatever. But when one of the participants said this is fantastic, the week after that everybody listened to it, and most of them found that it was beneficial. So it makes a big difference when people get that kind of encouragement or reinforcement from their peers, from other people in the group, and that's why discussion forums, one of the reasons that they can be really beneficial. It doesn't matter what I say, I'm not a real person, a therapist or trainer or whatever. My opinion doesn't really count because I'm biased, right? But when you're talking to other real people on the forum and they're like, I did this exercise and it really transformed my life, that carries a lot more weight. I can tell you I've read thousands of testimonials like that. It doesn't really mean anything. I could be lying. But when you read other people on the forum that are in the same position as you, and also more importantly, there's research that shows that people gain more benefit when they see other people similar to them struggling but overcoming obstacles. So when people say, I did this exercise, I found it a bit difficult to get into, and then I persevered, and that's of more benefit than anything else. It makes other people think, I'm like that, I had some setbacks, and it gives them encouragement to persevere, and maybe gives them some hints and tips on how to overcome problems. So I'll just check in briefly with your feedback. I've got a new strategy for doing this now. I'm using Alt 2 and 3 to switch between tabs. Everyone's saying hi, where are you from? Los Angeles, London, miss London, hopefully get a chance to be back there soon. spent more time in London and the southeast of England than I have in Scotland, believe it or not. Somebody in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, I could virtually wave to you. Scotland, well, cool. Hi everybody. Real people in Dartmouth in Scotland. So the feedback form is, just to summarise the scores, the clarity rating, so how clearly worded was it. The mean score for that was 4.74 out of 5, which is kind of what I'd describe as about as high as we can reasonably expect. I'm not sure at the moment how that compares to previous years, but then again the wording hasn't changed that much. Impact 4.72 out of 5, which is about as high as we could reasonably expect, and that again probably hasn't changed that much since previous years. And the interesting one is feasibility in terms of the software, the technology. Was rated 4.9 on average this year, which is surprisingly high. That's almost perfect, which means that very few people had any glitches with Teachable. Now, I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are about that. How did you find the software we were using this year? Did you have any problems with it? What, if not, what made it go smoothly? Why did you find it good? I know it kind of looks nice. So do premium WordPress themes and stuff, potentially. You could make another website that looks the same. I think part of it was that people found this more usable on mobile devices, possibly. That's something I think that some people mentioned. So we'll see about the more detailed feedback that we get from people on that. Be interesting to know. So let's dive right into your comments. And like I said, if you've got any other questions you want to ask me that I'm not covering from the feedback forms, then put a little asterisk in front of them and just post them in the live chat area, and I'll go through those at the end of the session today. So overall, the most common thing people said was a positive thing, which is nice, that they liked the clarity and the simplicity of SMRT and the way that it focused on giving practical advice. And that's interesting because sometimes you also get like a bit of a contradiction. You can't please all the people all the time. So sometimes people kind of want other things or other demands in the training. So sometimes I have to say no to certain things if I feel there's potentially a bit of attention. So people mainly did like the clarity, simplicity, and the practical focus. I'll come back to that in a moment. Some people said they liked that it didn't take too much time, whereas other people said they found that it took too much time and they didn't have enough time to keep up. Not many people though, the majority of people that give feedback anyway seem to feel that it's okay in terms of the amount of time that it requires. We've done more detailed questions on this for Stoic Week in the past, and we know a little bit about the average amount of time that people spend on the exercises and stuff like that as well. That's all been published in Tim's reports on Stoic Week. You could spend hours and hours and hours reading our previous data on SMRT and Stoic Week. I think the balance is probably about right in terms of the amount of time that it takes. We need you to do a certain amount of work so that we can gather meaningful data from it. Stoic Week takes less time than SMRT, and that's because it's not designed to generate serious data in the same kind of controlled way. SMRT we are piloting for use as a research protocol, so it needs to be reasonably demanding so that you're likely to do the exercises enough that you actually produce some tangible changes. Like, to learn skills require a certain amount of practice. That's why it's 4 weeks long rather than 1 week. Whereas Stoic Week is more just of a public engagement exercise. We do get some data from it. It's mainly correlative data rather than outcome data. And that allows us to introduce people to a range of techniques. Here's a bunch of different techniques, try a different one every day. But if we're serious about measuring improvement, then we want you to do more consistent techniques each day, so there are more measurable benefits. That makes it slightly more repetitive for the participants though, and also means that things have to be presented in a slightly simpler fashion in SMRT. A lot of feedback people gave on the benefits. I want to quote some stuff first. Someone wrote, I quote, "The course is very practical and the exercises are easy to remember, and so rather than forgetting, I've been putting them into practice. The course has stuck with me even when I've been busy and distracted, and that has been one of the most impressive things. The content has really embedded itself in my mind and is changing my behaviour. So we get some really good feedback from people like that. Just to give you an example, that's what one of the participants said. You may even be watching now. And like we get a lot of feedback from people describing the way in which they've managed to integrate the exercises. For instance, someone else wrote, and I quote, "The course is helping me to improve my mental well-being and my interactions with others, and it's something which is incredibly valuable to me." And we even get much more dramatic feedback from people saying this has transformed my life. And sometimes people will talk about specific problems they've been facing: bereavement, like alcohol, drug addiction, just major life events they're having problems coping with, divorces and stuff. We've kind of heard it all, as you can imagine. We've got tens of thousands of participants over the years, and so we've heard a lot of anecdotes from people about really difficult situations that they've been negotiating during the course. So some people will say life events happened and they dropped out of the course. The paradox about that is you'll get just as many people saying, I was going through a terrible life event and I did the course and it helped me to cope with it. So the time people are most likely to abandon using these techniques is often the time other people report getting the most benefit from them. Ironically, paradoxically. Also, necessary to give a mention, someone else said, and I quote, "I really enjoyed the webinars, course dog in particular, and Donald saying cool." I didn't even know that I said cool a lot. Maybe it sounds weird in my accent or something. It could be worse. I could say awesome, which I probably already have, as we say in Canada. But Mookie is collapsed on the floor behind me. She heard her name. There you go. She's still alive. She's moving. A very lazy dog, aren't you? And the comment sections are another brilliant source of learning. Yes, the comment sections, social learning, really important. A few people mentioned this idea that sometimes things weren't 100% clear in the description, but in a way that doesn't matter if you read the comment section, because one of you folk doing the course will say, I don't really understand this exercise, and then someone else will usually chime in and say, I think this is what it's supposed to mean, and then I'll kind of chime in maybe and say, yeah, that's right, that is what we meant it to mean. And so it kind of all comes out in the wash, as it were. And if that happens enough times, then I'll go back and reword the course itself. But generally when people get stuck, other people can help them out. Or even if you kind of talk about working things out, other people will read that. Lurkers, for want of a better word. There are people that don't comment. The majority of people don't comment on these things, but just read them, and they'll benefit from your comments. And they'll tell me later, they'll give us feedback and say, I was just a lurker, I didn't post anything, but I got a lot of benefit of reading the discussion. Someone else wrote, and I quote, "Not enough footage of Mookie Dog," which seems hard to believe because she's usually, speaking of lurkers, in the background pretty much most of the time, although not really saying much until the postman comes, and then she'll go crazy. Some people said they found it hard to keep track of the exercises. I think... Oh yeah, there's a couple of things about that. A lot of people say, could we have like a summary page? And I need to go back and quadruple check this, but we actually have one in each week of the course, but it's kind of at the beginning rather than at the end, and people asked for it to be at the end. So maybe it looks like people miss it. So maybe what we need to do is highlight it more and maybe put a reminder at the end, maybe rephrase it to make it clearer or something. But we get a lot of people saying, could we have a reminder of what you're supposed to do each week? There actually is a summary page. It's called the overview for the week in each of these sections. Some people want the course to be longer. You'll always get feedback from people on any course. Some people saying, I want the course to be longer, and then there'll be other people saying, I want it to be shorter, usually. Like, you can kind of look at which one is more common. The longer courses, the higher the dropout rate will be, as like one of the most consistent things about online courses. Shorter courses, I have lower dropout rates, lower attrition rates, and that's one of the big battles with online learning. So we don't really want to go beyond 4 weeks, but what I'd usually say in response to questions like that, can we have more stuff? There's other courses, you can do Stoic week as well. There are other courses that I'm developing. There are other things that you can do online if you want to take it further. Then there are courses that other people deliver as well. Massimo's got a course. There's a bunch of other people that already have other online courses. So rather than expanding SMRT and making it longer, I'd probably refer you to other stuff. We want to keep it within a certain limit. 4 weeks, I think, is about the right size for the use that we want to make of it. That would be that's a fairly good size for doing outcome measurements. Some people wanted a daily check-in to increase accountability. Now, I could be wrong, so I'm not sure exactly what they meant by that, but I feel like if we ask people to kind of check in every day on the web, we might have quite low compliance rates for doing that. However, a couple of other people mentioned wanting an app, a mobile app with reminders or push notifications for exercises, etc. And I am anyway, talking to several app developers, always, how many, I don't know, 3-4 app developers at the moment, about different ideas about using a kind of wellness type app in the future for tracking progress, journaling, self-monitoring, and setting up push notifications. Because this comes up a lot, and it seems to be a tricky thing to get an app developed in some ways, but it's partly because there are so many people that have different ideas about what they want it to look like, and we would want it on Android and Apple. I think when we surveyed people, most of the people doing our courses actually used Android, but a lot of the app developers seem to just want to do it on Apple. So we kind of need coverage of both platforms, but we are talking to people already at the moment about doing that. So watch the space. That might happen next year or something. And that would be one way of maybe preventing attrition or dropout or reducing it, and helping people to remember the exercises if they're getting notifications on their mobile phone. The closest we can get to that at the moment is bombarding people with email, which isn't entirely reliable, because sometimes that ends up just going in a spam filter or not getting through to them for some reason. Let me just again check in briefly. See where we are with the live chat. Yep. Can you post links to Massimo's course? Okay, cool. I'll go back and check these things later, and I'll respond to them at the end. There's a few more feedback forum questions that I want to look at, or comments first. People find the audio recordings helpful. That was one of the other things that was commented on. We get that. We've done more detailed feedback on the nature of the content and what people like, and consistently people tend to say that they find the audio recordings particularly useful. It's interesting because a lot of people, when they design online courses, don't include audio recordings. It takes a little bit of experience and a little bit of effort, a little bit of equipment to do audio recordings. It can be incredibly tedious if you're not used to doing it. I've done many over the years because my background is a therapist, so I kind of got used to the technical side of it. But the recordings that we're using in this course are a little bit old as well. So we know they're very popular. I've actually just been doing a bunch of new ones, which I hope are better quality than the ones that we did before. They're always kind of scope to improve them. Some people found the webinars the most helpful thing, but they said that they weren't into the discussion or the social media, which is interesting, right? Because when people give feedback, one of the things I notice about human nature is often people assume that their feedback is representative of everyone else's, but when we're reading through the feedback from like dozens or even hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people, it's interesting to notice the differences in like people's requirements or their expectations. So some people really like the webinars, and then other people said the opposite, that they weren't really into the webinars, or they didn't find it accessible, they didn't have the time to watch them or whatever, and they preferred social media and the discussion forums. Some people said they thought there should be more discussion about the quiz questions. Another person said that there should be more extensive quizzes or knowledge checks. We didn't want to do too much of that though, because we didn't want the course to be too much about Stoic philosophy as a theory. We wanted it more to be a skills training protocol. So actually in that kind of thing there wouldn't normally be any quizzes at all. We just put them in because we wanted to encourage engagement a little bit, but kind of keep them fairly minimal. So it's not, I'll come back to this in a moment. So some people doing the course kind of wanted it to be more like an education in Stoic philosophy and the theory. We specifically wanted to avoid making the course look like that. There are other courses for that. Like, we wanted to make this one simpler and more skills based. One person said that they would have preferred having fewer quizzes. I think what they actually said was that this course has fewer quizzes than other online courses, and they preferred it that way. So some people want more quizzes, some people prefer fewer quizzes. I think the way we've got it at the moment is more in line with our vision for what the course needs to be like as an outcome study, like a treatment protocol, psychological skills protocol. Someone suggested in-person meetings with participants would be helpful, maybe small groups of 10 using Google Hangouts, something to suggest that participants arrange. I don't think that I could coordinate it. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about the practicalities of setting that up. We do have 1,853 participants, so that would potentially be a lot of small groups. And also we kind of try and avoid doing things that fragment too much. So we do want to try and make the experience as consistent as possible for people, and not to kind of have subgroups going off and maybe doing things in a different way. And we are also a bit strapped for time in terms of organising things, so maybe there are ways to divide people into small groups. That has been something that has been raised before for discussion. I feel that it would require supervision, possibly, moderation, so something maybe to continue thinking about. Here we go. Someone had written, and I quote, "It was more psychological than philosophical than I was hoping for." And then someone else had written, "I'd like some more academic, not boring, ideas and information about Stoicism, modern and ancient." So a few people said that. I'd say that's not within the remit of the course, though. This is very much not a course on Stoic philosophy from a theoretical perspective. It's very much presented as a skills training about applying Stoic psychological exercises in daily life. So again, what we normally say is there are other courses that you could look at if you want more of that. There's stuff on YouTube that you can access, and there are loads of books as well that you can look at for that. So SMRT isn't for like learning about Stoic philosophy per se. It's more about learning the skills and techniques and applying them in practice. Maybe I should say a little bit more about the history of that. Well, we did Stoic Week for a few years, and then people said, well, we'd like to gather data on this, and we want to know if it really works or not. And we said, well, Stoic Week's not really designed like for gathering outcome data. We need to design a different protocol, so we designed SMRT to be usable for that. And what we've done so far are kind of like pilot studies. We're in talks with researchers at the moment to put together a more controlled study, so potentially we could compare it to other exercises that people might do for 4 weeks and see the benefits. And for those of you who haven't read the previous reports, though, we've got a ton of data on previous participants in SMRT that show pretty substantial improvements on validated outcome measures for well-being and satisfaction, life satisfaction ratings. The sort of measures that are already used to measure outcomes in positive psychology studies and in cognitive behavioural therapy and in resilience training, so that we can compare the benefits of Stoic Week to the benefits of other types of psychological skills training. People said they loved doing the values clarification, but they found it difficult. I'd say that's the point of the exercise in a way. Like, doing these press-ups is difficult. The more difficult you find it, the more useful it potentially is. If it was easy, you wouldn't be getting that much benefit from practicing it, perhaps. But values clarification is difficult, and there'll be a certain number of people who kind of give up when they find something challenging like that, and that's where it requires your peers and the facilitator to encourage people to persevere through the difficulty, because that's when you're really going to get the most benefit out of it. It is hard, like it does require effort, it does require patience and perseverance, but also people report getting a lot of benefit out of it. Again, if you even read the comments people made, you'll see other people in the group saying how much they got out of doing values clarification stuff. 2 people said they wanted PDF or EPUB files, like in Stoic Week. They didn't mention Kindle for some reason, although I think that's one of the more popular formats. We just didn't have the time and resources to do it this year. Basically, it takes a little bit more time to edit and prepare those, and so we'll see if we can do it for Stoic Week again. But there is a PDF version of SMRT, but it's the original version of the course from 2014, so it's pretty similar to the current version. And the limitation is that it doesn't have any of the audio, or I think there are some video sections as well, or like the quizzes and stuff in it. It's just the reading, but it does mean that you can access it offline or print it off or whatever. So we do try and supply different formats, but this year just didn't have the time to produce that. 2 people said they didn't feel comfortable commenting in discussion forums or the live chat here because they didn't feel that they had anything to say. I'd encourage people just to chip in anyway and comment on things that other people have to say, because I think people get a lot of benefit out of that, but I understand that it's not everyone's cup of tea. Someone said, I quote, "I think a strength of the course was inviting people to discuss with the group. A weakness, and this is not really the course's fault, is not feeling comfortable just jumping into an online forum with people I don't know." I emphasise this more on previous courses, but where you're creating an account, maybe I'll say this more in the future, one small thing I think that helps is, like, if your username is like Terminator 4 or something like that, that I feel like makes it seem less informal and friendly in the discussion forums. Like, whereas if your name is Donald Robertson or Joe Blogs or whatever, I feel that the discussion forums then seem more informal and people feel more able, like the other participants seem less like strangers. Also, if you've got a photo of yourself and stuff, I think that helps a little bit to encourage people to take part. It makes it seem less intimidating to certain people. But also just saying where you're from and introducing yourself briefly, even making small comments can kind of get you into that process of engaging the discussion. Someone else said, "I enjoyed the live webinars," I quote, "and Stoic exercises. If Donald Robertson," that's me, "just created a course doing nothing but highlighting all of the different Stoic methods and their empirical success given modern psychotherapy, I would pay money." Maybe I should do that then. I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago though, where I just kind of did a blitz and I rushed through an overview of all the Stoic psychological exercises, so you can find that on YouTube pretty easily. I think it's probably linked to this one. So the book I wrote, The Philosophy of CBT, kind of does that as well. But I may do more stuff on that again in the future. That's my hobby, like the psychological skills in Stoicism and looking at the whole kind of range of them. I'm a techniques guy in psychotherapy. Someone else said they'd like another more in-depth course. Yep. I'm about to start running a course next week, which is much more in-depth and focuses on teaching Stoicism by looking at the example of Marcus Aurelius and examples from his life. But I'm not going to say much more to plug that because it's kind of separate from modern Stoicism. That's my own one of my own training courses. But that's something I'm in the middle of doing at the moment. Someone said, "The only problem I had is hardship of asking questions during the live lecture. Often the questions would disappear," I should have read this at the beginning, "in the discussion between the same few members. I was wondering, would it be possible to organise Google Hangout for such people so that they can chat as much as they wish and leave live chat for questions?" I don't think we need to do that. As I mentioned earlier, we'll test this out in a moment and see if it actually works. I think if you want to ask me a question, if you put an asterisk in front of it, then if I'm reading through the live chat and there's like loads of stuff, people were arguing about Stalin or something last time, so I've only got a few seconds to read it. Like, sometimes I'll miss questions that are buried in the middle of that. But if you put an asterisk in front of it, then let's say that's the indicator, and hopefully I'll notice more of the questions. One minor weakness, someone said, was that the webinar was on the same day that the course material was released. Personally, I don't mind. It kickstarted each week and encouraged me to spend some time on a Sunday engaging with the new course material, but some students may not have the time to engage with material before the webinar. I can see why Sunday would be a good day to do the webinar, but maybe in future it could be done at the end of each week rather than the beginning, or start the course midweek so that it runs through a weekend. Well, I'd be interested to know what you think. I disagree. I think if we've got a webinar that gives an overview of the week, it makes more sense to do it at the beginning, because even if not everybody can watch it, the people that do watch it or watch the recording of it are going to get a little bit more clarity about the exercises that they're about to do. So I think it's more useful to have that information in advance. I think we used to start on a Saturday or a Monday, and we surveyed the participants, and the feedback we seemed to get was that there was a marked preference for starting the week on a Sunday, and so therefore I think that the best day to do the webinar is probably on a Sunday. Some other people have suggested doing more than one webinar, but we probably don't have the time, resources to do that. That would be require twice as much work. So I suspect Sunday is overall the best time to do it. Someone else said, a weakness is reliance on social media that have privacy issues. I would interact more if I were sure Facebook or Google were not making my remarks searchable or revealing more than I intend. I think we said, use the social media, but it was more of an optional thing. The discussion questions are actually on the website, our domain, on Teachable, which is behind a login, and it's not searchable by Google. So social media isn't really an integral part of the course as I remember it. Maybe I need to go back and reread what we said. There were a couple of people that said that though, so it kind of made me wonder. But the discussion forums we have got nothing to do with Google or Facebook. They are where we mainly expect you to discuss the questions are behind a login and not searchable on the web. One person mentioned having problems downloading audio to iOS devices. Yep, that every time. A little bit of politics. I blame Steve Jobs. It seems to me that Apple kind of deliberately make it difficult to access books or audio files that you haven't purchased from them via iTunes, basically. So it's also the case with the EPUB files. It's not hugely complicated, but there's another step or something compared to doing it on other types of devices. Apple just make it a little bit more of a hassle. We had instructions before about how to do that. Maybe we need to kind of make sure there's another FAQ page about if you have an Apple device, this is what you're going to need to do to access the audio. I think you have to download it onto your laptop or your computer and then import it into iTunes and your library, and then you can access the audio on your iPhone or iPad or whatever. But I don't use Apple. I understand that's a process though. Okay, so let me just check in briefly now. I'll pop out your chat and have a look at what you're saying. How are we doing for time? It's going to be more like 45 minutes, isn't it? Software worked nice, no remarks, looked cool on desktop and phone, says Bruno. Would be nice to have PDF too. We have a PDF of the 2014 version, but not the current version. Audio for live streaming is not always consistent. Let me know if there are any problems with the audio in the live stream. Used my Android solely, worked excellently. Oh, that's good, cool. Yeah, it's kind of surprising. You did put all this effort into technology. There are a significant minority of people that just want to print the course out though, which is fine. I really like the audio recording. It's nice to relax, prepare for my commute. Are there others? I lose track now. There are others floating around somewhere. On the Modern Stoicism website, there's a page with a load of audio recordings from Stoic Week and SMRT, so you can look there. And I've also just been recording new ones for my own courses. I found Teachable very intuitive. I've used a platform like it. Could easily switch back and forth between Android and laptop. Cool, that's good. Can you truly be a Stoic Prokopton without self-awareness? That's a really interesting question. I'll give a brief answer to it. I could talk about that. I could probably talk about that all day. The short answer is no. And the interesting answer, I've got a feeling I mentioned this in another webinar. I won't go on and on about it, though. Like I say, I could say a lot about it. I think one of the keys to understanding the Stoic exercises is that it looks like the early Stoics, Chrysippus and Zeno in particular, and wrote books about Stoic therapy. And in them they endorsed the idea of having a personal mentor. And in the early days of the Stoics would know each other. They may even lived in the same household. Also in the Roman era, it was very common for Roman noblemen, if they were wanting to be Stoics, to have a Stoic philosopher invited to live in their household. Marcus had several tutors, probably lived with him. He saw them very regularly, and part of the Stoic practice was constantly being monitored and having your character criticised and evaluated by somebody you trusted and gave permission to speak candidly with you, very frankly, about your character. It's interesting, we've got this fascinating stuff in Marcus Aurelius where it looks like possibly the guy that did that for him was Junius Rusticus, who was his main Stoic tutor. And Marcus tantalisingly talks about how he thanks the gods that he never lost his temper with Rusticus, even though sometimes he started to get quite angry with him. So there's little details like that kind of make things jump out the page and come to life. So, what were those discussions like where Marcus as a youth training in Stoicism was really kind of like having to bite his lip and struggle to avoid losing his temper with the guy that was training him in Stoicism. If you look at Epictetus, you can kind of see him, the confrontational way he speaks to some of his students and how some of them may have felt like their anger rising in response to that. They may have felt it was kind of provocative. And my point is really in bringing that up that I think Stoic mindfulness in particular, as it was originally conceived, was very much dependent on that role of the mentor. And in fact, there are many passages where the Stoics kind of allude to that and talk about imagining that you're being observed by someone else, and doing it in such a way that it makes you more mindful of your actions. Imagine that in the thoughts that are going through your mind, you'd be speaking out loud, perhaps speaking or confessing to a Stoic mentor, and using this idea of being observed by another person as a way of heightening self-awareness. Galen, who's one of our main sources for this, refers to one of Aesop's fables where he says everyone is born with two bags of flaws. One of them hangs in front of him and contains all of the flaws of everybody else in the world, and he can see it very clearly. Another one hangs behind his back and it's invisible to him. So we have a blind spot for our own flaws. Like it says in the Gospel of Matthew, you can see a tiny speck of wood in someone else's eye, biasing their judgment, but you can't see a whopping great plank of wood in your own eye. You have huge biases ourselves, but we have a blind spot for them. And Galen says that's why you need a mentor. You need someone that you can trust, who's wiser, more experienced, who shares your values, who you can be honest with, and they can be frank with you and point out to you things that you didn't realise that you were doing. And he also implies that this is a process that people go through and then gradually they become more autonomous and independent and more able to be self-aware. Also, the evening review that Seneca and Epictetus talk about sounds like it might be related to this. So at the end of the day, based on the golden verses of Pythagoras, reviewing everything you did throughout the day 3 times and kind of critiquing and evaluating it. That seems like it resembles what a mentor may have done in the flesh, as it were. So yeah, I think it's hard without some of these tools. Generally, we have to do without somebody like that coaching us individually in Stoicism. It definitely makes it harder. I think the Stoics emphasise that. It's hard to arrive at self-awareness without that. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to go on too long about that. I could say a lot more. How does practicing Stoic handle making the same mistake time after time? After, once again, insight, learn from it and adjust. But if you find yourself making it time after time, example, procrastinating. That's hard. It's very common though that people repeatedly fall into the same traps. The short answer is spotting it at an earlier stage, if possible, will often be helpful. Rewarding yourself for exhibiting an alternative piece of behaviour can be helpful. especially in the early stages of changing it, and maybe also experimenting with different coping strategies or alternative behaviours in response to it, sort of things that we would do in therapy. That's a short answer. Someone says, Alfonso, can you identify trigger points, the points where you're starting to go wrong? Yeah, like identify the high risk situations, internal and external triggers, try and catch early warning signs. I agree, absolutely. Where can one find this course? Which one? Massimo's course? Is doing the virtuous action still to be chosen over the neutral or non-virtuous action if it will lead to suffering of yourselves? The Stoics would argue that virtuous action should never really lead to suffering. Okay, I'm looking to see if we've got any other. Can you please post a link to Massimo's course? Yeah, I'll post it later in the permanent comment section. I ripped on my hand this afternoon during hobby work. I did that fixing a computer a couple of years ago. There's blood everywhere, blood all over the inside of my computer. Literally blood, sweat and tears went into repairing that computer. Yeah. I burned my hand, actually. Maybe, I don't know if you noticed in the videos. In the last one, like I burned my hand in my cooker the other day in my oven. Hello from France, hi. Is this live chat? Yeah. Are there any other questions in here? I don't think we've got any other questions actually, so I may wrap up there. I think that's everything. Yeah, okay. So let's conclude there. Thank you very much everybody for coming along today. And it's goodbye once again for the last time for this course. For me in Nova Scotia, it's goodbye. Oh, she's sleeping, not half asleep. Goodbye from Mickey Dog as well. And I look forward to seeing you in any number of places. Like Stoicon, I'll probably meet some of you, or feel free to email me. And on social media, like on other courses and stuff, I'm sure I'll be bumping into some of you again, either online or in person. And like keep following Modern Stoicism, the website, and our Twitter feed for updates about other things that we're doing. And I hope you'll all consider taking part in Stoic Week this October as well. That'll be another chance to do some stuff. So thanks again. I hope that you all benefited from SMRT. Read other people's comments for some encouragement in that front, and make sure, if you haven't done so already, that you fill out the brief course feedback form, and if you filled it out at the start, to submit the post-course questionnaires for Tim LeBon as well, so we can gather your data. Okay, cheers again. Bye everybody.